What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Lawrence, aka Law. This is a channel that I call The Catch, where I break down fantasy football and everything sports talk. And in this video, this is part 3 of a series that I'm putting together where I'm breaking down each running back to pick in each draft to help you guys take a next step in your fantasy football season 2019. Let's jump right into the video. Alright guys, again thank you guys so much for coming by. If you've checked out the past 2 videos, I really appreciate it, but if you haven't, I'll go ahead and link them above, part 1 and part 2. And again, this is a series that I'm putting together of running backs, in my opinion, that you should draft in each round moving forward in your draft. And this isn't a video. I've been getting some questions from relatives and things like that, and their biggest thing is, you're not saying to draft a running back in every round of your draft, are you? And obviously not. Obviously, I'm not trying to tell you to do that. I'm just trying to tell you running backs who are bringing the most value, in my opinion, at their ADP or their average draft position in their draft, currently right now. So if you haven't checked out my past 2 videos, again, I'll link them above. But I've already covered, rounds 1 through 3 in the first video, and then 3 through, I believe it was 7. Maybe it was 1 through 4 in my first video, 3 through 7, 4 through 7 in the second video, something along those lines. But where I'm starting off right now is going to be the 7th round. I ended with Lamar Miller last video. And in that video, I was letting you guys know his average draft position right now is about 7th round, 2nd pick in the 7th round. And guys, he's going to be really the last starting running back of the draft at this point of your draft. So again, 7th round, 2nd pick of the 7th round, Lamar Miller is going to be the last starting running back that you guys are going to see available come the 7th round. So if you haven't scooped up enough starting running backs by then, you're really going to be reaching here, and you're really going to be digging. And from this point forward, it's really going to come into the situation where you really need to pay attention as to what type of league you're in. And what I mean by that is, if you guys are in a PPR league, half-point PPR standard league, or just a no PPR at all, you're really going to have to pay attention as to the players that are going to be coming up next. Because like I said, Lamar Miller is the last person available in the 7th round in the drafts that I've seen and the ADPs that I've been seeing based off of fantasycalculator.com, which is a great place you can go to get free mock drafts. I really love it. I really enjoy it. I think they break it down really well, and they're just fun to do, in my opinion. Don't take very long. But let's go ahead and jump right into it, guys. So again, at this point, there's no more starting running backs left in the draft. So it's a little bit difficult to be able to break down who it is that you're going to be able to take next. So this is what myself and the culture out there, the field, the analysts, what we call handcuffs. And what a handcuff is it's basically the runner-up to not just a stud running back, but any starting running back in general. So every team obviously is going to have to go out there and start a running back, and it's the NFL, guys. These people are running the ball. They're professionals. So they're not going to be terrible players. A lot of them. Some of them are pretty bad. They're schemed in wrong, whatever the case may be. Or it's just the coaches aren't working them in. They're getting a lot of the second string running back, third string running back, fourth string running back, all getting a lot of action in that little bit of a committee. But again, what a handcuff is supposed to do is supposed to be the solidified RB2 basically for each team. And so this is what I'm going to be breaking down for you a little bit, because to be completely honest with you, that's really all that's left. So moving on here, the first handcuff that I'm going to be going with is a guy that I feel really good about this year. I just get a good feeling from him. I don't really think that he got his opportunity last year coming from a really pass-heavy offense. But the guy that I'm talking about is the one, the only, Latavius Murray. His ADP right now is the 7th round, 12th pick in the 7th round. So going pretty late in the 7th round. So he's definitely somebody you can pick up. Hopefully, like I said, by now you've got your running back set. But this is a guy who could definitely come in and put up some numbers for your team, in my opinion. So again, Latavius Murray is a guy that's very interesting to me. So he was traded this year from the Vikings to the New Orleans Saints. And in that alone, just in that trade alone, in my opinion, drives Latavius Murray's stock, way up and in a hurry. So Latavius Murray was brought in to take over the spot of Mark Ingram, who was just traded over to the Ravens. And Latavius Murray is a guy who can absolutely fit this scheme of offense that the New Orleans Saints are going to be running. They typically run kind of a two running back setup in New Orleans. And so it's a situation where Latavius Murray comes in, and of course he's going to be behind Alvin Kamara, but I would say Latavius Murray is going to get quite a bit of carries. And what I mean by this guy didn't really get his chance last year. So if you think of Latavius Murray, maybe you had him last year, maybe he left a bad taste in your mouth. Let me break it down to you like this. New Orleans actually finished 6th in rushing over the total NFL last season, where Minnesota was the 30th ranked rushing offense in the entire NFL. And they also ranked 27th in rushing attempts. So he's a guy who didn't see much volume. He's a guy who was running the ball behind a team that, wasn't all that great. Now he's got a good offensive line. Now he's got a good offensive scheme with Sean Payton. And like I said, I know he's behind Alvin Kamara, but he's absolutely a guy who you can pick up late in the 7th round, who can bring value to your team. And it's just, you're not going to find much better talent at this point, and you're not going to find many players at this point in the draft who are going to be schemed in similar to how Latavius Murray is going to be schemed in. So he finished last season with 140 rushing attempts, 578 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But like I said, guys, overall in this position, Latavius Murray, just for the trade to the Saints in the offseason, he's a guy whose stock goes up in a hurry. The offense is better suited for his skill set. He'll be running behind a much improved offensive line. And he's going to be in a role last year where Mark Ingram only played 12 games last year. I don't know if you remember, or if you really kept up with it, or if you really care for that matter, that Mark Ingram was suspended for the first few games of the season last year, for some performance-enhancing drugs, things like that. I won't get into it because it doesn't matter anymore. Everything's clean. He came back, and again, this is only in 12 games, but he had 138 rushing attempts in 12 games as the second-string running back for this New Orleans offense. And if you didn't hear me the first time, Latavius Murray got 140 carries total last year in every game. 140 totals. Mark Ingram in 12 games had 138. So you can see where I'm going with this. He had 645 rushing yards, whereas Latavius Murray only had 578 last year, and they evened each other with 6 touchdowns apiece. So again, guys, overall, this offense is just better. The scheme is absolutely better. It's going to be a situation where he's going to be almost a 1B as far as running back. Alvin Kamara is great in the running game, and he's great in the passing game as well. But let's be completely honest. It's going to be a situation where he's got to be schemed in. Mark Ingram was schemed in, and they've got a similar style of play. They can both catch the ball. They're both really aggressive between the tackles. They're both phenomenal in the red zone. So he's going to be a guy who sees some red zone carries, and I wouldn't venture too far out to say that he's going to see way more red zone opportunities this year than he did in past years. Running the ball for the Vikings. But again, guys, just overall, Latavius Murray is absolutely a guy. If you're in PPR, he's going to be a guy that brings great value to your team because he can catch the ball out of the backfield. Now, again, I know he's got Alvin Kamara, who's going to be getting a good portion of that load. But Latavius Murray, going this late in the draft, he's absolutely a guy who can come in and give you great value. And let's be completely honest, these guys are in the NFL. These guys are both running backs. And I don't want to put anything bad on anybody, but guys, injuries happen. Alvin Kamara, not the biggest guy, and he's been working a lot on his ability to just kind of stay away from injury. He's not a guy that takes a lot of hard hits or anything like that. But guys, injuries do happen. And if that does happen, you can be looking at one of the biggest steals in the draft, having Latavius Murray as a handcuff for your team, who's going to be a handcuff to Alvin Kamara on the New Orleans offense. Give me that all day. Give me that all day. If he goes down, Latavius Murray is the solidified number 2 moving forward for that offense for however long of a period of time Alvin Kamara would be down. And I'm just speaking from example, and I hate to say it, but guys, it happens. These guys are faster now than ever. They're bigger now than ever. They're stronger now than ever. So injuries do happen. Again, Alvin Kamara is not the biggest guy in the world, but Latavius Murray can absolutely come in, and he can be that workhorse back if something bad like that did end up happening to Alvin Kamara. So guys, again, Latavius Murray, 7th round, 12th pick of the 7th round. So he's going pretty late, and if he's a guy that you can get your hands on, I absolutely suggest it. He would be a guy that I would be going after in this point in the draft in order to solidify myself at the running back position. But I'll go ahead and move forward here. I know my videos have been running a little bit longer than I would like for them to, but I'm working on it, guys. Give me a little bit, and I'm trying to keep them in the time frame that I'm really wanting them to be at. So again, guys, moving forward, this is a guy who I believe really has a lot of potential coming into this year. He's a guy that was really talked about, really hyped up last year coming in as a rookie, and he's a guy that myself and a lot of the analysts out there believe that he could come in and be a workhorse back for the Denver Broncos. And the guy that I'm talking about is Royce Freeman. Now, Royce Freeman's average draft position, or ADP, is 8th round, 10th pick of the 8th round. But Royce Freeman is a guy who, again, was really hyped up last year, and he had a lot of potential coming into the 2018 season when Phillip Lindsay came along. Now, Phillip Lindsay, if you didn't know and if you didn't hear about him last year, was a guy who was undrafted. I believe he actually went to the University of Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. Call me out on that if I'm wrong, but I believe he is a Colorado native, and he went undrafted to them. I would probably say that, this guy's a hometown kid. The Denver Broncos really wanted to give him a shot. So Phillip Lindsay came out of the woodwork, and he came in and finished 9th in total rushing last year. I can't remember exactly how many yards he rushed for last year, but the guy was absolutely phenomenal. Little guy, small in stature, but he plays with a big chip on his shoulder. But Freeman, every time he got worked in there, it was a situation where he really had the odds stacked against him. I saw a stat the other day that said something along the lines of 30% of the snaps that he played, he saw 8-man fronts, being that there's 8 men stacked in the box for him. And that's really difficult to run against. A lot of people aren't really seeing that much. Some people see 6, maybe 7, and that 8th guy really does make a huge difference. So every time he came in, he was seeing a lot of stacked fronts. But he finished 2018 with 130 attempts, 521 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns. But in my opinion, Royce Freeman really has some good upside to him. And let me tell you why. In my opinion, they're getting a whole new coaching staff in there, whole new play callers and everything. And Royce Freeman isn't a guy who's bad. He's really not a bad football player. Phillip Lindsay just came in and he was the better football player. And that's totally okay. You see that type of stuff happen, almost every couple of years. An undrafted guy comes in, he makes a name for himself. And that's good and great, absolutely. And I have nothing bad to say about Phillip Lindsay. I wish him nothing but the best. But Royce Freeman could absolutely come in and be a guy who can provide for your team, and this is why. So Phillip Lindsay last year went down with a pretty brutal wrist injury. I was reading some reports that said it was and this is all in quotations, so it was a pretty serious injury, and that he may not ever have the same wrist strength again. It wouldn't be too big of a deal if he was an offensive lineman, maybe a defensive lineman, but in a situation where you're going to be running with the football, whatever side it may be, I can't remember what wrist it was that he did break, but a situation where if he doesn't have the strength to be able to hold on to that football, he's not going to be a guy who gets a whole lot of the workload. And again, Phillip Lindsay is a smaller guy. He's a guy who looks for the contact, and just history says it. I don't even have to have a stat in front of me to know that a guy typically of his size and his play style isn't a guy who really lasts in the NFL for as long as they should be or as long as they could be, because they go looking for that contact against safeties, against middle linebackers, whatever the case may be. Guys that are so much bigger than them, they go looking for that contact and they go running full sprint ahead. And it's just not a good thing, guys. That type of stuff wears on the body, and it absolutely wears on the body of a guy with the size and stature of Philip Lindsay. So in my opinion, Royce Freeman is absolutely a guy who you should go after simply because of that reason. You know, Philip Lindsay puts himself on the line every play, but I don't think that he's going to be getting the workload that he saw last year. I really don't. I think it's going to be with this new coaching staff that they have coming in. You could really start to see a little bit more of a balance of attack between the two. So do I think Philip Lindsay gets more carries? Absolutely. But do I think Royce Freeman has the capability of coming in and getting more than 130 attempts like he did last year? Absolutely. I think we're going to be looking at somewhere closer to almost the 200, 200 rushing attempt line. And simply because, again, the new coaches, and then they got Joe Flacco quarterbacking for the Denver Broncos. Not a guy that I really trust, not a guy who I really don't think he trusts a lot in himself, to be completely honest with you. Not a guy who airs it out, just kind of a guy who dinks and dunks. He loves his tight ends, things like that. But I think it's going to be a little bit different of a style that we're used to seeing with the Denver Broncos. And I really think that Royce Freeman can come in and be an extreme value to your team, especially if you're talking about picking up somebody in the 8th round. At this point, it starts to get a little bit scarce, whether you're talking about wide receiver or running back. So it's a situation where if you need a little bit more depth in the running back position for your team, Royce Freeman, go ahead and add him. Go ahead and lock it in my opinion. Like I said, guys, overall, Philip Lindsay, I don't think that he stays healthy all season. Number 2, I think that the coaching staff comes in and notices Royce Freeman isn't the type of guy who needs to get 130 attempts. He's a guy who can start to get a little bit more than 200. And number 3, Joe Flacco being the quarterback there, not a guy that they probably want passing the ball a whole bunch of times next year, 400 or 500 times next year. So I really feel strongly about Royce Freeman moving forward. I really think that he's a good running back, and I really think that he's a guy that you can pick up in the later part of the 8th round in order to add more depth to your fantasy football team. So again, guys, that's Royce Freeman, Denver Broncos. In my opinion, go ahead and lock that one in for sure. So guys, I am scratching and clawing. I am looking. Oh, guys, I don't even know how to break this down to you. I know you're thinking, man, I'm coming to you for tips and I really need your help, but gosh, it took me a minute to try and figure out who I wanted to go to in this 9th round. It was pretty difficult for me, but the guy that I ended up going with is a guy who is going to be the backup running back to a guy who hasn't proven to be able to stay healthy over the last few years for the Atlanta Falcons. And the guy that I'm talking about is actually Ito Smith. So Ito Smith is drafted right now in the ninth round, 9th pick of the 9th round is his average ADP. But again, guys, he's second on the depth chart behind Devontae Freeman, and he's a guy who the Falcons must really like. He wasn't able to really show a whole lot last year in his rookie year, but he's a guy who's, really young. I wrote it down here. I think he'll be 24 this year. So he was a guy who was really young last year. Didn't really see a whole lot of NFL talent, NFL caliber defenses in college. But Ito Smith is a guy that shows the Atlanta Falcons that he can absolutely handle that 1B role, that RB2 role for the Atlanta Falcons. They did let go of Tevin Coleman, I'm sorry. They did trade Tevin Coleman to the 49ers, did keep Ito Smith. So Devontae Freeman and Ito Smith are the other 2 running backs of choice basically for the Atlanta Falcons. But Freeman is returning to the lineup after a little bit of an injury last year, something that kind of plagued him all season. So for you guys that ended up drafting him like I did, I feel your pain, guys. I absolutely do. But Freeman is going to be coming back this year. But he hasn't played a full season since 2016. Which could lead to a little bit more of a balanced attack between the two of them. Maybe it's a situation where the Atlanta Falcons realize, hey, Devontae Freeman is a guy who we can't seem to keep healthy, but we absolutely need him come playoff time, come playoff run. So maybe it's a situation where they save him a little bit, similar to what we've been seeing, with Kawhi Leonard this year. And I mentioned this in my other videos, but I really, in my opinion, think that we're going to start to see a little bit more because let's be completely honest, during the season it matters. And the conference games, I mean, not the conference game, the division games, they matter. But it's a situation where the playoff games is really where it comes in. So if you don't have your ace running back come ready for the NFL playoffs, you're rolling the dice on starting a guy like Ito Smith. That's not taking away anything from him, but everybody knows, and it doesn't take a genius to know that Devontae Freeman is absolutely the better back than Ito Smith as compared to Ito Smith. But Ito Smith finished last year with only 315 yards. Now you got to remember, Tevin Coleman did play a few games. Devontae Freeman did play a few games. Tevin Coleman came in, was with the number 1 running back. So Ito Smith was really the number 3 running back and was number 2 on the depth chart when Devontae Freeman was not playing. But Ito Smith last year finished with only 315 yards on 90 rushing attempts. But he managed to punch in 4 touchdowns, so he was a guy who could absolutely punch it in from the red zone. But the Falcons had an opportunity this year to go after a running back in the draft, maybe pick one up during free agency to add a little bit more depth behind Devontae Freeman. If Ito Smith wasn't a guy that they trusted, they could have gone after a Carlos Hyde, somebody along those lines. So in my opinion, that really shows that the Atlanta Falcons really trust Ito Smith and believe that he can be a solid RB2 behind Devontae Freeman. So I really think that 90 attempts obviously is going to go up. Again, it doesn't really take a genius or much of an analyst to start to notice that more than 90 attempts, more than 315 rushing yards. It's the volume is going to absolutely come. And then if you're talking about if Devontae Freeman can't stay healthy, then you're talking about Ito Smith being absolutely the starting running back for this team. I mean, it's not even close. And in my opinion, there's nobody on the depth chart right now who's going to be giving Ito Smith a run for his money. Unless something happens, he starts fumbling the ball, whatever the case may be, then you can call me out and say hey, Lawrence, on June 17th this year, you said Ito Smith would be a really awesome pickup, a really awesome handcuff behind Devontae Freeman. But look how that turned out. He's fumbling every time he touches the football. Obviously, they're going to be more aggressive, start putting people ahead of him, things like that. But in my opinion, Ito Smith was a guy who really showed that he can handle the load, and the Atlanta Falcons believe the same thing too. And again, guys, we're talking about Devontae Freeman being the starting running back. Again, a guy who has not been healthy for a full season since 2016. So Ito Smith, I would be going after Ito Smith if you don't already have your running back set up, things like that. Ito Smith, to me, is going to be a good guy who's going to see some volume next year. He's going to get some touchdowns next year. And then, oh boy, if Devontae Freeman goes down with another injury, I'll be licking my chops for Ito Smith then. So moving forward here, guys, again, that was Ito Smith with the Atlanta Falcons being drafted in the 9th round currently right now in June. But moving forward here, guys, this is going to be a guy who is a veteran in the league. He bounced around from team to team last year, so it was a little bit difficult to be able to see his skill set, be able to see the type of things that he could do, because he wasn't really familiar coming from the 49ers to any of the offenses that he was able to play for last year. But the guy that I'm going to be talking about right now is going to be Carlos Hyde. Now, Carlos Hyde, again, was a guy who was traded to the Chiefs. His average draft position right now is 10th round, 3rd pick in the 10th round. But he was a guy who was traded to the Chiefs, and he was a guy who automatically came plugged into the RB2 spot behind Damian Williams there in Kansas City. Now, of course, if you didn't know, Kansas City has released Kareem Hunt, who has signed with the Cleveland Browns. Spencer Ware is going to be, I believe, was traded to the Colts. So Carlos Hyde comes in as a veteran in the league, and he's going to be playing behind Damian Williams, who did take that starting position. But in my opinion, there's a few questions kind of surrounding Damian Williams. Now, I might catch a little bit of heat for this, but don't get me wrong, I love Damian Williams, and he's going to be absolutely a guy that I go after in this year's draft in order to, hopefully make an RB1 position for me if I have to pick him up in the 2nd round or whatever the case may be. And again, I went over that in another video. But Damian Williams does have a few questions surrounding him, if we're being completely honest. Now, we didn't see a lot of Damian Williams last year. It was a situation where he came in towards the end of the season, after everything happened with Kareem Hunt. Spencer Ware went down. Damian Williams came in and absolutely stole the show, and he absolutely stole the heart of myself and probably several other fantasy football players if you managed to be able to pick him up, because to be completely honest with you, he helped you win probably your league. I know he helped me win my league. But the question surrounding Damian Williams is, one, is he a guy who can handle the workload, be the go-to guy all year long, all season long? And with that, with the workload comes number two, injury. Is he a guy who can stay away from the injury bug? Is he a guy who can stay healthy? Is he a guy who can, come in every game, put up numbers, again, stay healthy, those type of things? Those are things that none of us have seen, guys. None of us have seen that. I haven't seen that. Nobody else has seen that. So it's a situation where those type of little things really kind of draw my attention a little bit more to Carlos Hyde. And Carlos Hyde was brought in my opinion, for that reason. Carlos Hyde was shown that he can carry the workload at a place like the 49ers, like he did a couple years back. But last year, he really didn't get a chance to show everything that he had, to show that he still had some gas in the tank, because he did jump around from team to team, and it's difficult to be able to learn the scheme, things like that. I mean, he was traded to the Jaguars at the end of the season, and it was just, why? Why? Why did the Browns go after him if they wanted to trade him? Things like that. And I mean, it's just a situation where it's difficult. You have to know the scheme. You got to get your timing down with the offensive linemen, especially with the speed that the NFL's played in nowadays. So Carlos Hyde, I think, doesn't get enough credit for the things that he was put through last year. So again, guys, in my opinion, Carlos Hyde was brought in to be able to take that RB2 spot and maybe that RB1 spot if for whatever reason Damian Williams doesn't show that he can carry that workload and that he can stay healthy. And that's just, in my opinion, and just a feeling that I have. So take it as you wish. Believe in Damian Williams all you want. I believe in Damian Williams. But, there's a world out there where Damian Williams doesn't hold up. He doesn't live up to the hype. And Carlos Hyde comes in and he says, "Oh baby, I got this. Believe me, believe me, I ain't done." So again, guys, I mean, he's proven to have been a guy who can get 150 plus carries, 200 plus carries in a season. And he's a guy being picked up in the 10th round. And let's be completely honest, again, this is a handcuff. Again, Carlos Hyde was drafted to the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the highest attacking offenses in the league. Now, a big thing for Carlos Hyde is he's, I'm going to stand here and say for sure that Carlos Hyde isn't a guy that can be really used in the passing game. So just be aware if you're playing, PPR. Carlos Hyde really isn't a guy who could be used in the passing games, how Damian Williams is. So Andy Reid is typically a guy who sticks to the one, to the one running back type of thing, mixes in a second running back to give the RB1 a little bit of a break. But we could potentially see, again, there's a world out there where Damian Williams doesn't live up to the hype. Carlos Hyde comes in and he's the RB1 for the running downs, and Damian Williams comes in for the passing downs. And Damian Williams is absolutely a guy who can be a playmaker in the passing game. So Carlos Hyde, in my opinion, is a great handcuff moving forward. Now, again, we always risk the injury thing. Can he stay healthy? Can he handle the workload? And we do know that Carlos Hyde is a guy who can come in, again, and handle 150 plus carries, 200 plus carries, whatever the case may be. But right now, he's the RB2 for the Kansas City Chiefs, a great offense, and he's in a great position, especially if Damian Williams cannot live up to the hype. So, again, Carlos Hyde, Kansas City Chiefs, being drafted in the 10th round. If you want to go get your hands on him in order to handcuff him to Damian Williams, absolutely, I'd be all for it. I wouldn't even second guess it if he's a guy that I was going after either. So that kind of wraps up a few of the guys that I think absolutely you need to go after. Absolutely, you can handcuff these guys, and they're going to be a great value for your team. And let's just say, for example, if you do draft Damian Williams. Now, in my in my opinion, those are valid points. The questions I just asked is, can he stay healthy? Can he handle a workload? But if you're an analyst out there and you're a guy who thinks, oh yeah, Damian Williams is a guy who can stay healthy. Oh yeah, Damian Williams is a guy who can handle the workload. That's great that you feel like that, but we haven't seen it. It's not a proven thing. Yeah, I didn't go as far back as to check his collegiate status, kind of how his health was in college, but it's a situation where we don't know. The NFL is played at a different speed. The guys are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, things like that. So these are some questions that kind of surround Damian Williams. And Carlos Hyde could absolutely come in and be a great player for your team if those type of things don't pan out for Damian Williams. So if you're going to be a guy who drafts Damian Williams, probably like I will, I would love to get my hands on Carlos Hyde so I don't go into a position where, oh hell, Damian Williams isn't going to be the guy getting the football. What am I going to do? Somebody picks up Carlos Hyde, now you're caught with your tail between your legs and you're not knowing what to do. Same thing with Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman, you draft him, go ahead and pick up Ito Smith. I mean, what does it hurt? You're in the later parts of the draft right now. These are things that you should be doing. These are things that you should be thinking about, things that you should be looking for. Is if my ace running back, because some people are going to be picking up Damian Williams as their first running back. If Damian Williams goes down and you don't have Carlos Hyde, you're going to be in a world of hurt because you're going to be starting a guy like Ito Smith and Devontae Freeman's not going to be hurt. And it's just not going to be pretty. You know what I mean? It's just going to be a really crappy situation for you and your football team and whatever type of money that you put on the line. So I'm here to tell you, be cautious of that. If you draft Alvin Kamara, go ahead and get you Latavius Murray in the 7th round. What does it hurt? It's not going to do anything. Who are you going to pick up in the 7th round that's going to bring incredible value to your team? So in my opinion, just get settled with it. And even if you don't draft Alvin Kamara, you can draft a few of these other guys because a few of these guys are people who are shown to get hurt. The only person who's really not is Alvin Kamara, I guess. Philip Lindsay's shown that he can get hurt. He's a smaller guy and he looks for the contact, so that's never really a good sign. Ito Smith playing behind Devontae Freeman. He could be a guy who, if Devontae Freeman goes down again for the 100th year in a row, Ito Smith can absolutely come in and be a provider for your fantasy football team. And I'm not saying he's going to be a guy who can put up 30 points, but he's absolutely going to be a guy who, in that high-powered offense, can score you a touchdown or two. And who's going to be mad about that? I'm not, for sure. But Carlos Hyde, again, is a guy who you should definitely consider, especially if Damian Williams is a guy that you're going to pick up, because Damian Williams is going in the 2nd round. Now, you could get Carlos Hyde all the way down to the 10th round of the draft, maybe even later if you're playing with guys who really don't have an idea as to what's going on, and they're just going based off of people that, hey, that name rings a bell. But be familiar with your situation. Be familiar with what you got going on, and be cautious of these things moving forward, because if you're not, you can find yourself in a really crappy situation. And I'll say it again, you'll find yourself in a really crappy situation, and you don't want to do that, guys. You don't want to do that. So moving on to a few of the other guys who, again, that just kind of wraps up the guys that I believe you should really take and really handcuff those guys in order to solidify yourself with some depth for your fantasy football team. But these are some guys that I didn't really want to call them honorable mentions, because I don't know. It's whatever. You can call them honorable mentions. You can call them whatever you want. But a couple of guys that I'm thinking of late part of the draft is a guy like Adrian Peterson, for example, who's my first, I guess, honorable mention. Adrian Peterson is drafted right now in the 11th round. 4th pick of the 11th round is his ADP. But yes, he's still in the league. Yes, he's still got some juice left in him. And yes, he can absolutely be a provider for your team, and I'll go ahead and break it down for you and let you know why. So he was a guy who everybody thought was kind of out of juice, out of gas, didn't really have any more left. Go ahead and hang it up, AP. You had a good run, man. But ADP said, screw that, screw everybody. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to go and get it. So he found himself with the Washington Redskins, and last year was a guy that when Darius Geis got hurt, and if you don't know who Darius Geis is, he's a guy that the Washington Redskins actually drafted to come in and be their RB1, but is a guy who got hurt in the preseason to a pretty brutal knee injury. So AP comes in, he gets 250 plus carries, 251, so not many, but 5th in the NFL. 251 attempts, was 5th in the NFL. He rushed for 1,042 yards, which was 8th in the NFL, and he ran for 8 touchdowns. What? What? Yeah, AP. AP came in and did that for the Washington Redskins, and he flew under everybody's radar last year. If you stole him in the draft last year, kudos. He might have won you your fantasy league or absolutely gave you a great record and absolutely got you to the playoffs. But my biggest thing with AP is this whole Darius Guy situation is something that leaves me a little eerie, but if you needed some depth at the running back position, Adrian Peterson is a guy who's being drafted, so you got to get him. It's not like you can pick him up in free agency, but I mean on the waiver wire, not as free agency. I'm sorry, but if AP is not a guy who you can pick up on the waiver wire, he is a guy who's being drafted. But the whole thing surrounded Darius Guice is he is scheduled to make a comeback this year. Be on the field, get some attempts this year. But again, guys, he was a rookie last year, and he got hurt during the preseason. So Darius Guice has a lot of hype surrounding him, and I'm going to venture out to say as he's kind of overhyped. I mean, yeah, we saw him in college. Yeah, we saw him for a little bit in the, in the preseason. But yeah, he was a guy who shows great. He looks good. He feels good. He felt good, I guess you could say, but he doesn't feel all that good anymore. He got a pretty brutal knee injury, and according to Jay Gruden, the head coach of the Washington Redskins, is the process is taking a little slower than anybody would have hoped, but he's a guy that is going to be ready by training camp. Now, I went ahead and looked at playerprofiler.com, which if you don't know is a website you can go to. You can actually look at depth chart, and you can actually look at statistics from the year before, and really any year that running back's been in the league. You can see a fantasy point breakdown. You could even see they even break down, and I love it. These guys over at Player Profiler are phenomenal. They break down, again, this is where I get my stats, 251 rushing attempts, 5th in the NFL. Those are the type of things that they break out, and I give the guys over at Player Profiler a lot of credit. They do a phenomenal job over there. But yeah, Player Profiler is an awesome place you can go to be able to check statistics like that. But Adrian Peterson is set right now as the RB1 for the Washington Redskins. And he could be a guy who, if Darius Guice doesn't show to be 100%, and let's be completely honest, even if he is 100%, do you really think Jay Gruden's going to be a guy who goes out there and gives him 250 carries like he did to Adrian Peterson last year? I really don't think so, guys. He's going to be a guy who probably gets, I would say anywhere from 150 to 160, something along those lines, kind of easing him back in. And that's still a pretty decent workload, 150, 160 carries. But in my opinion, Adrian Peterson can be a guy who still has the juice and who can still get over 200 carries last year. So he's a guy that you can kind of plug in. You can almost plug him in right away, and he is in the 11th round, guys. He's a guy being drafted. So if you need some depth at the running back position, I'm telling you right now, Adrian Peterson is my go-to back. If you find yourself in the 11th round, 10th, 11th round with not very much depth at the running back position, go ahead and pick you up Adrian Peterson. What can it hurt? Darius Guice comes in. They got a little bit of a committee there in Washington, but Adrian Peterson hasn't shown the Redskins any reason why they shouldn't be giving him the football. So why should you hesitate to draft him? It's a situation, again, if you don't have the depth, go ahead and get Adrian Peterson. Darius Guice is coming off the injury. They're not going to give him the workload like Adrian Peterson had last year. Adrian Peterson does have the juice. He does have gas left in the tank. And he can be a guy who can provide for your fantasy football team. So go out and get him. It doesn't hurt anything. Another guy on my honorable mentions list here is Nyheim Hines. I guess you can go after Nyheim Hines. He's a guy being picked up in the 11th round, 8th pick of the 11th round. But he's only a guy that I would be picking up probably in the PPR leagues, things like that, which is typically what I play anyways. But I really wouldn't be picking up Nyheim Hines for really anything other than being a guy who who can catch some passes, pick up a few points. He actually caught 63 passes last year, which was 8th in the NFL. He didn't do much with them. He only had about 425 yards. So it's a situation where it's getting pretty thin now. You're talking about the final few rounds of the draft. You're really talking about adding depth. But Nyheim Hines, sure, especially if Marlon Mack goes down, he's still going to be having to battle with Spencer Ware, but Nyheim Hines can be a guy who, in PPR formats, can be a guy who provides for your team, especially if you're talking about anything bigger than a 12-team league. Maybe you got 15, maybe you got 16 players in it. I know I play in a league that's pretty big like that. So Nyheim Hines, there's really not many running backs left at this point in the draft unless you want to take some reaches on some, handcuff rookie players, things of that sort. But again, Nyheim Hines is playing with the Indianapolis Colts, so he's with a pretty high-powered offense. He's utilized a lot in the passing game simply because Marlon Mack isn't really the go-to guy on passing downs, and Andrew Luck is a guy who's smart enough to, if there's nobody open downfield, he absolutely take the check down, and Nyheim Hines is a guy who can make people miss and get some extra yards for you that way. So he's a guy who could bring value in PPR leagues. I really would stay away from him in anything less than that. So guys, that's actually going to wrap up today's video. And I just want to finish by saying thank you guys. Thank you for the support. Thank you for coming by and checking out the content. I'd love to hear y'all's feedback. I feel like I really haven't gotten as many comments as I would like, but I'd like to hear your feedback if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. I just want to be able to get better and hear you guys' opinions. So again, thank y'all so much for coming by and showing support. Please tell your friends, tell your family, especially people who are big into fantasy football like you. I just really want to help everybody get an edge, get a little bit better of an understanding, because I know, especially when you're talking this late in the draft, if you're not a big football guy like me and a few of the other analysts out there, you probably really don't know a lot of these people. So these are guys that I like to go in depth for, and me being a big football guy, I just love doing it. It's fun to me. It's interesting to me, and I like the gamble of picking these players because nobody knows, guys. Nobody knows we all see their ability, we all see their skill set, we all see their offense, we see their numbers from the year before, but none of us know what type of season these guys are going to have, next season. So it's fun to me, guys. I really enjoy it. So please, if you enjoy the content, tell your friends, tell your family. This is my channel, The Catch, and my name is Lawrence, aka Law. And this is something I really enjoy doing, and this is something I'm going to be doing for a while. So again, tell your friends, tell your family. Thank you guys so much for coming by. I'll be releasing more videos in the future. Stay tuned. Peace.